This is the Johnny Cleveland Podcast, all things Cleveland sports, with your host, John Suchan. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Johnny Cleveland Podcast, part of the Fanatical Elves Network and Fans First Sports Network. We appreciate you tuning in to our network. It's a Monday night. It's summer, well, almost summer. I'm still working. Maybe you're still working. It's June 8th, and we're happy to have you along. We have a plethora of other shows on our network, so I hope you can tune into those as well. Dog Pound South show with Steve Gill was just yesterday. If you haven't had a chance to tune into Steve, we've got the Browns Blitz coming up later this week with Rod and his brother Jeff. Great programming there. Sam the Man Britton just had his show, Browns Breakdown, so make sure to tune into all of our networking every day of the week, most days, and lots to talk about here with the Cleveland sports scene, specifically the Brownies. We'll start there. And I talked a little bit about this the other day. Myles Garrett, obviously the big news last week, just about this time, getting traded to the LA Rams. Been a lot of interesting topics and conversations that have come off of this conversation. Myles played in with this team for 9 seasons, and he made his mark, right? He made his mark. He definitely did. He broke the sack record last year, and all that was just very, very cool for him, for the Browns organization, for the players. Part of that conversation this week has been discussing. Was Myles a favorite of not just the fans, but the players? There has not been a lot of hoopla and congratulations and wish you the best to Myles. Maybe privately they have, but publicly, most of these players who are much younger, let's keep that in mind, than Myles. Myles is going to be 31 years old. So there is some of that, and that's partly what kind of probably pushed some of this forward. And now I know some of you are upset still that why didn't the Browns do this a year ago when Myles did demand a trade? And let's be honest, if you are honest and you've been a fan of the Browns and watched Myles play over the last 9 seasons, it hasn't been hunky dory. It has not been a match made in heaven. This team has still struggled even with the best defensive player around. So there's all of that. And I think all of you need to take that into consideration. And I know some of you are upset by the haul that the Browns got back in return. Jared Voss is a very good player, but some of you are complaining that we should have had more picks in return. Look, Myles might have a good couple more years, and I'm sure we're all going to be annoyed as hell as we go watch him play with the LA Rams as they're on national TV all the time. So there's that. But this Browns team is getting younger, and I write for Northeast Ohio Sports Insiders and Dog Pound Daily as well. Did an article last week in reference to the youth movement with this Browns team, and we really have kind of been turning this corner. And I know many of you are sad that Myles was kind of like one of the last pieces to that previous Browns team that did so many fun things initially, especially when Baker Mayfield got here in 2018 and Jarvis Landry, and there was all that hoopla with Odell Beckham Jr., and then you had Nick Chubb along the way. So there's a lot of that, but there's nobody really left from those groups except for a few players like a Denzel Ward, great cornerback for the Browns, who was asked and questioned about his being here in Cleveland, and he certainly wants to be here in Cleveland and it's us again, it's Ohio against the world, is I think is what he said. Denzel Ward played for the Ohio State Buckeyes, so he's a good guy, and I'm sure Myles was a good guy, but it does say something. And I know this is Draft Day, the movie, going back with Kevin Costner, and we're questioning the quarterback from Wisconsin back then. But did anybody come to Miles Garrett's birthday party? So it really is something. And, in this social media age, you will see more times than not people congratulating or good luck or all of that, even in that zone. And really haven't seen much of that. So, interestingly enough, too, Miles Garrett showed up immediately to OTAs in Los Angeles, something that he hadn't done for many years here in Cleveland. And we sort of brushed it aside, always saying, "Oh, well, he'll show up. He's Miles. He'll show up. He'll turn out the sacks and all of that." But notice that he showed up right away in Los Angeles with a big grin on his face. He's in Hollywood, folks. He's in Hollywood. It's sort of like he's a lot like LeBron. He loves the spotlight. I mean, he loves that energy, people talking about him. I'm not sure exactly how huge of a team player Miles really was. There are many things that if you want to go back and look, rewind the tape on how he discussed his former coaches, his players that he played alongside, he was not always complimentary. And I know it's the game of football and it's rough and tough and all this stuff. But Miles is also one that think of himself as a scholarly fellow. And so there's a lot of mixed messages with Miles. And to be honest, its time has come, and he's not here any longer. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this new Browns team can do moving forward. Now we still have a few little pockets of stuff that are very old and tiring, like the quarterback competition. Um, Deshaun Watson still being here, the $230 million man, is annoying as hell, and people are annoyed. We're tired. I, I'm annoyed that we're still talking about this like he's going to be the week one starter. I'm going to trust what my colleague Steve Gill is telling me, and what he's telling all of you is that, don't expect Deshaun Watson to be playing this season, regardless of what the local media folks are saying and the national folks are trying to say, because they're trying to get clicks. Deshaun Watson's coming off serious injuries, to most recently again to a ruptured Achilles tendon. And I know he looks great throwing the ball in shorts and t-shirts, but it is what it is. And and both know. I mean, I know, at least personally, when I start watching these Browns games, I'm not going to be a happy camper if Deshaun is out there throwing the ball around. Now, I know we all talk about, well, if he's winning games, then that'll change your opinion. Okay, sure. But I'm not planning on him winning games. If you think that he's going to go out there and roll this Cleveland Browns team to a 6-1 record to start the season, you are crazy. Listen, I'm an optimist too. I love my brownies, but that's being way too optimistic. I know you'll say, oh, well, the season hasn't started and we got 3 months and blah, blah, blah. We all know what we saw and we know what we have in Deshaun Watson. He's over the hill. He's done. He didn't play an entire season. He hasn't played several seasons. He's played 19 games. The $230 million man is worth 19 games. So I pray every day that Shedeur Sanders is their starting quarterback. Now, I know some of you don't care for Shedeur very much, but at least give the kid an opportunity. And I'm looking forward to that because he has nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I think that's why Shedeur is going to excel. I think he has the support of his teammates. I think he has the support of his new coaches like Todd Munkin. And I think that that's going to drive him to be and win this supposed competition. We'll see how it all pans out. I will be disappointed if Deshaun goes into week one. I think a lot of fans are going to be disappointed. And regardless of what the Browns are trying to spin, it's going to be a real letdown if in week one, Deshaun Watson is quarterbacking this team. It just really is. It's disheartening. After everything that we've gone through and seen, it's we don't need any of it. So the fact that they're kind of prancing out and trying to promote all this is really just ugh, makes me just ugh. Probably makes you do the same thing. So we'll see what happens. But now, interesting, with all this conversation about Deshaun Watson and Miles Garrett, I also wrote an article recently about Andrew Berry because he's been in the news. Why? Because he's been involved in these mega trades. We made Andrew Berry made this ginormous trade for Deshaun Watson. and it's been a complete dud. And then this last week, he's made the trade for Myles Garrett. Will that be a little different? Will that trade end up being different? Right now there was an article written by I think Bleacher Report. They came out and they ranked the top 10 most blockbuster trades that involve players, not draft picks and whatnot. As far as, for example, like back in '99, oh shoot, lost my train of thought there. Who was the kid that got the running back? Oh man, can you believe that? Wait, I gotta go read my own article. Hold on a second. um, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a complete blank. Give me a minute here. Um, it's gonna hit. Oh, Ricky Williams. Ricky Williams. Do you remember in '99? Ricky Williams got traded for everything under the sun to the New Orleans Saints. Ricky Williams has come out since then and said he really wanted to play for the Dog Pound. And instead, the Browns, drafted Tim Couch. We all know that story. But anyway, this article on Bleacher Report was talking about all these great drafts, these blockbuster drafts, and they have Andrew Berry's two trades: the Myles Garrett trade at number 5 and the Deshaun Watson trade at number 3, all time on this list of top 10 drafts. So that means that the Browns have been involved in two of the biggest blockbuster trades of all time in the NFL, according to this article on Bleacher Report. The number one, if you were around back in the day, 1989, they say that the trade of Herschel Walker from Dallas to Minnesota, the Vikings got Herschel Walker. Then that's when Dallas got all those first round picks for like the next up teen years, and that's where they got Emmitt Smith and they all the players, Troy Aikman, I think they were all involved with that big turnaround in Dallas back in '89. So they talk about that being the blockbuster trade of that. But I did there's a couple quotes here from that article that I wrote, and this is a gentleman by the name of Christopher Knox, who writes for Bleacher Report. He wrote this about the Myles Garrett trade. I thought this was interesting. And thanks for watching us right now on YouTube, Facebook, the X, or you can listen to us later on Apple or Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere you listen to your best podcasts. We are there. Just type in Cleveland Browns or type in Fanatical Elves, and you're going to find us. So he wrote this, Knox did, about the Myles Garrett trade. The fact that the rebuilding Browns decided to cash in their biggest trade chip wasn't surprising piece of the deal. What was surprising was that Garrett requested a trade last year and was instead placated with a 4-year, $160 million extension, which we all know about. The Browns at least got a solid return for the 30-year-old Knox or Garrett. Verse now, who will only be 26. That's the player, Jared Verse, who's going to replace Garrett. Will only be 26. He's already been a 2-time Pro Bowler. I would like to mention that Shedeur Sanders is also a 1-time Pro Bowler, just to give you some context. But he also said this later on about the Deshaun Watson trade. He said the Browns gave up a ridiculous haul for Watson. Oh, no kidding, Dick Tracy. In return, they've gotten 19 starts over 4 seasons and a whole lot of bad football. Amen. Watson will only have one last chance to salvage his career under new Browns head coach Todd Monken. However, Watson has been a bust to this point. Duh. Thank you for pointing that out. A complete bust. And the cost of adding him is why the Browns are rebuilding without Garrett rather than chasing playoffs with him. I mean, we lost 10 years with the Deshaun Watson trade. And that's why, Steve Gill, my colleague, says, that's why, the owner, Jimmy Haslam, is trying to get his money's worth out of Deshaun. And despite saying that ship has sailed a year ago, is everybody in the Browns front office changes their tune, saying, oh, we can still get a little bit more out of Deshaun. Gosh, don't fall for this crap. And if he does end up on the playing field, There aren't going to be a lot of happy fans. Now, I know that we all want this Browns team to win, and that's something that we all care about. We go about it differently, but that's the deal. So, all right, let's pause here for a quick commercial break. This is the Johnny Cleveland podcast. Hey, thanks for tuning back in to the Johnny Cleveland podcast. We are a part of the Fanatical Elves Network, part of Fans First Sports Network. I would like to point out that we are not in any contest for being the best podcast network in the land. I know there are some other podcasting platforms out there that you can choose to listen to, and there's a lot of great Cleveland Browns podcasters out there. Don't get me wrong, but we're not entering their name in any competition. Though I know some other podcasters are, and good luck to them. But we're not that kind of podcast. So we just hope that you tune in, tell your friends, tell your family about this network of Browns podcasters who like to talk about the Cleveland Browns just like you. And if you're a Browns fan and you've been a lifelong fan like me and many of the others that work for our network, you know that it comes with the ups and the downs and the heartache and the euphoria of doing something really cool. They were showing the highlights of when Baker Mayfield came back into play when his first start back in 2018 when he came in game week 2 or week 3 against the New York Jets. It was a home game. It was a Thursday night, and Baker was not scheduled to start that game. Hugh Jackson, the idiot coach, was still coaching, and Tyrod Taylor got hurt, and in comes Baker Mayfield. And the Browns were down 14 to nothing. And many of you maybe were at the game. I had season tickets. I was at the game after coming off of 2 seasons where we were what 0 and 7 or 1 and 16 and 0 and 17. What what we saw Baker Mayfield do that night was completely amazing. And I still won't ever forget. That's probably one of the highlights of as a fan being there at the stadium. Even some of the playoffs games I went back to in the middle to late 80s that I saw as a teenager. That game in 2018 against the Jets, and I know it wasn't a playoff game, but to win the way that we did and to have Baker Mayfield come out and introduce himself to the world on the stage, on the national scene was tremendous. And the euphoria and the excitement, that's what Browns fans are all about. And that's why we should be recognized for the loyalty that we are as a Browns fan base. And we are so dedicated. There is not a fan base across the globe that is any stronger or more committed than us. So good for all of you other Browns fans and good for you other podcasters. I hope you win your contest. We're not in it for the contest. We're here for that. You can listen to us and see our pretty faces here on the X or Facebook on occasion. Okay, so mini camp starts in a couple days here in Berea in Cleveland. So all the players should be back. It should be interesting. They aren't going to have pads on and uh, they'll be running around with helmets, t-shirts, and shorts again. But it'll be good to have the veterans back, get a bit more bigger vibe of how things are going to be. Todd Monken is really winning the fan base over with his rough and tough sort of chatter. He's really making sure when local beat reporters try to ask him questions over and over and over again, the same ones that he's reminds them that they're dumb questions and that he's going to move on. So it's refreshing, like I've mentioned before. And I think he's got the attention of the fans, but he also has the attention, most importantly, of his players and this organization now that he's running. He's an old guy, dude. He's like 60 years old, 61 years old. He has very limited head coaching experience. He's never coached as a head coach in the NFL. He has some head coaching experience at the college level, I think Southern Miss, but that's been it. But he's saying all the right things. We'll see what it looks like. I mean, obviously, right now we got 3 months to go before the season starts, and we can talk till the cows come home. It's not going to matter very much until we actually see what it looks like. I'm not going to I'm not going to invest a lot in week one. Week one is not usually a very good showing of exactly what this team's going to be made of. But by week 5, 6, and 7, we should get a pretty good baseline for what to expect the rest of the season. The Browns win total was by the betting services were at 6.5. It's dropped a little bit to like 5.5. I don't think it's going to drop off that much. And I know a lot of people are saying that Myles Garrett bought them 2 wins. Yeah, I can see how some of you would say that. And Myles Garrett has won a game or two. And and he did a lot, even the game last year against Cincinnati and other teams like the Steelers, who every team the Browns were playing toward the end of the season were taking their entire offense and going against away from Myles Garrett. So he did have an effect on them. Now Jared Verse, I know he's no Myles Garrett yet, but give the kid an opportunity. I think he's going to flourish in this town, in this community. I think that he's going to be uh, given standing ovations, and fans are going to just fall in love with him. So anxious to see how that all pans out. But the mini camp is this week, so anxious to see how that all looks and feels. And we'll go from there. We got a long summer ahead of us and lots more conversations to talk about with the Brownies. The Did want to give a shout out to I'm starting up a new podcast potentially. It's going to be called something like Heartbeat Cleveland. And the concept is I love focusing in on, Cleveland, especially the athletes, the players, the Browns and the Cavs and the Indians or the Guardians, and players over time, over history, or even current players that have meant more to this community than we can ever uh, tell them. And Jose Ramirez, the Guardians, 14 seasons now with the Cleveland team. 14 seasons. That first season he didn't play that much, but 14 seasons and just standard of excellence. What he has done for this Cleveland Guardians team is just fantastic. So we're going to focus that program on some of these players like Jose Ramirez, and old school back in the day, shout out to Kenny Lofton, that 95 team. I mean, my God, you can go down the entire lineup. Jim Tomey, what he meant to this community. Albert Bell. I mean, just some tremendous. And let's get back to football. I mean, who do we all love the most? I mean, who we all talk about is, if you're a Browns fan, it's Bernie. Bernie Kosar, Now, you young people who are listening to this podcast, you have no idea who even Bernie Kosar is. I wish you did, but he did so much. Grew up in Youngstown and, just was drafted here in the supplemental draft by the Browns, and just changed the whole dynamic of what the Browns were back in the mid 80s. And speaking of the supplemental draft, I was going to mention this, and I know it's been in the works for a while. Let me look here. Let's see here. Um, yeah, the Sorsby kid. The kid that basically gambled $1 billion while he was playing for Cincinnati as the quarterback. He was going to now go to Texas Tech, and then they denied him and said he couldn't play there because he gambled. Well, today some stupid judge decided to change that tune and said that he could play. But now I'm hearing tonight, like the other people in the Big 12, um, who are part with Texas Tech, are talking about not allowing Sorsby to play, even despite this judgment that came down. So I know some Browns fans have talked about getting Sorsby in the supplemental draft potentially coming up. Todd Monken is pretty much the Browns coach has said no, it would be a bad idea. I mean, you're diving into a lot of stuff, and I know some people don't care. They say, "Oh, well, I'd much rather have somebody who was a gambler than somebody who was involved with sexual assault cases like Deshaun Watson." But Todd Monken said he doesn't want anything to do with Sorsby. So let's listen to the coach. So all of you people that are out there talking about Sorsby and bringing him in, let me no. And then some of you are wanting to bring him in next year, and I'm like, hell no. I mean, if the Browns decide to do that, I will be greatly disappointed again. I mean, there are a lot of other great, well, I won't say great, there are a lot of really good prospects right now that are lining up for 2027 at the quarterback spot. Just uh, not including the Sorsby kid. So Sorsby can go somewhere else. Let him go play for some Los Angeles team or New York team. It'd be more fitting that he ends up somewhere like that. Go let him be a New York Jet. You know, that's fine with me. So The couple of things I want to finish with, just switching gears to the Cavs. I know that's been a conversation since the Cavs lost. They got swept by the New York Knickerbockers. The New York Knickerbockers are undefeated, folks, in the playoffs. They are just doing some phenomenal things. I'm I can't believe it. I mean, they're the Knicks. I honestly though, I think that Brunson and Josh Hart and the other kid who they've been playing together for years, going back to college ball at Villanova. And you start watching some of the film of these guys, and you start watching, how we as Cavs fans look at how this Cavs team, and so how quickly we forget. I mean, our Cavs team is very good, but they had some really bad moments in the playoffs, and I know that a lot of people are nitpicking about this or that. But when they were good and when they were dishing the ball and distributing the ball left and right and playing really good team basketball, it was a thing of beauty. And the New York Knicks are doing that right now, and that's why they're winning all these games. San Antonio is one of these young and up and coming teams. They got that huge giant who plays for them, who, by the way, needs to do a lot of growing up. I don't know how much truth there is, but there's some, been other his conversations and what he says to his players. I think there was a game a couple weeks ago in the playoffs where he supposedly said something to some of his teammates who then did a hard foul on this other opponent of theirs. And I don't think he's a very smart kid right now. I think he's very immature. I mean, what is he, like 21, 22 years old? I just think that he's got to be humbled a little bit. I think the Knickerbockers, I mean, I'm not good at predictions, but based on the fact that the Knickerbockers just took two games in San Antonio, would suggest that the Spurs are done and that the Knicks probably are going to sweep this series and be the next champs. I I could say things worse. I'm not a Knicks fan, but to see what they've done and how they're doing it by going undefeated and playing that group team game is pretty impressive. Now, one player here in Cleveland that I've mentioned many times, my dear friend Dean Wade, and some of you folks out there are just darn right rude about this kid. And I can't tell you how awful that is that you have to treat this kid with so much haste. He is a great person, and for the fact that you have to diss on him for things that you have no idea about as far as basketball is concerned. Some of you out there, I say this every week, think that you know the game of basketball. You have no idea what you're talking about or watching. So when you're ripping Dean Wade and you're talking about this or that, you should just shut up. You should just shut your mouth and move on because you don't know what you're talking about. But in the course of Dean Wade, I will say this because I know a lot of you have been. The conversation came up yesterday in the local media talking about Dean and how the Cavs are more interested in potentially keeping Dean around. I don't know how serious that is. Somebody just floated that idea or who pushed that out, but Dean's a free agent. If you haven't figured that out, and if you're not paying attention to the Cavs roster, he's an unrestricted free agent. So the kid can go anywhere that he wants, and he's going to have a lot of suitors. So I do not think I would not plan on. I mean, if Dean comes back to play in Cleveland, great. He's a great kid. He's a great family, great coach that I talk to on a regular basis that coached him when he was in middle school and high school that I have a lot of respect for. So um, if he comes back, he's played for the Cavaliers for what, 7 seasons. Some of you don't really pay attention to that, but he's been a rock to this organization, this team. And those of you who've been treating him like crap need to change your tune. You're not going to do it, but I'm telling you, you should. So I wish Dean all the best, and I hope he comes back. But I think what happens to Jarrett Allen will be interesting because if Jarrett Allen happens to leave this team, I don't think that's in the plans at the moment. I mean, we're not hearing a lot, but if he were to happen to leave, I wouldn't be surprised if Dean follows him. They are best friends. They've known each other a long time on that team. So I wish everybody well for the Cavs. I hope Donovan Mitchell comes back, and James Harden can't play defense, so I'm sure he's a pretty good guy. But it was an interesting way to go out. But maybe it'll make you feel a little bit better if the Knickerbockers sweep the San Antonio Spurs here for you Cavs fans who are really hoping to get to that point. The Cavs did a lot of good things this year. They won 2 playoff series. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. So give them their props and their due. So finally, I thought just on a side note here, Let me get a sip of my soda here before I run out of my voice. Oftentimes, when I'm on the Fanatical Elf show on Thursdays, Steve and Sam and I talk about. We start the show. We talk about the weather, and we here at the Suchan household, we like to look and watch the weather. We oftentimes have the Weather Channel on in the background. I know we're crazy weather geeks, but we enjoy it. And I was watching it the other day, or actually earlier tonight, and they were um, they mentioned, how sometimes when you're watching, these programs like the Weather Channel, and they'll mention some of they'll show some town on their maps, and the name of this town was Last Chance, Colorado. Last Chance, Colorado. I always find that some of these names of towns are just very interesting. I mean, hell, I grew up in a town called Wooster, Ohio, but you spell it Wooster. Shout out to those of you fine folks from Worcester, Ohio. Some of you will see that and you go Wooster. Understandable, Rooster, Rooster. I get it. And there is a Worcester, Massachusetts that you spell Worcester, I think. So I used to live out in Wichita. Well, I've told this story before, but an old friend of mine, Dan, used to work at a radio station in Rochester, New York, on a college radio station. And there was a story coming out of Wichita. Fine city, love Wichita, lived there for 26 years. And but the guy on the radio, he called Wichita Wichita. So there's a lot of crazy names of towns. I wondered if you ever, what are some crazy names that you know of towns? Just here in Ohio, there's basically there's just down the street here. Well, not down the street. It's Bellefontaine, but you spell it Bellefontaine, um, town out west. But unique spellings of places like that. Or you think you go up near where I grew up in Worcester. There's a town called Medina. It's Medina. There's lots of different ways of pronouncing that. Lived out there in Kansas. I was delivering pizzas at a little town. I lived in a town called Derby outside of Wichita, but the town next to Derby was called, of all names, Mulvane. Mulvane. I was delivering, like I said, pizzas for this town called Mulvane. Now I work in a school district that the name is Licking Heights, which is a unique name for a school district. So there are lots of interesting names out there. And so when I heard them talking this evening about Last Chance Colorado, I looked them up. They're basically, as you're moving east back toward Kansas, if you left Denver, the story goes that they had a post office, they had a place, a gas station. It's a ghost town now, but it's still on the map. They said there's like 25 people that live there in Last Chance, Colorado. But there are some really wild and crazy names of towns. I wrote down a few other ones. In Kansas, there's one here in Ohio too, Salina. Some people pronounce it Selena, but it's Salina. In Kansas, they had the town of Manhattan, which, if you're from Kansas, that's the Little Big Apple, not the Big Apple, but the Little Big Apple, because it was Manhattan, Kansas, where it's the home of Kansas State Wildcats. Shout out to the Wildcats. The town I visited one time for a teaching job was named Chanute, Chanute. So lots of crazy names out there. So I'm interested in knowing what names of towns have you crossed by or heard before that are very unique. So we'll continue this conversation. I was thinking that for our show that we do on Wednesday nights, my colleague Troy and I we do our Stadium Mustard and Cincinnati Chili show where we talk about food and sport. And I thought it might be fun to find some of these small towns and some of their best places to eat. And I don't think there's anything in Last Chance, Colorado. That they said it's unincorporated, so there's no one really there other than a handful of people. But I think you pass by it on near off of I-70 when you're traveling out west toward Denver. So, all right, folks, that's all I have on this wonderful Monday evening, June 8th. I hope you all have a very, very good rest of your evening. Stay tuned for more programming later this week. I'll have a Stirring the Pot show coming up later this week, and we'll have the Fanatical Elves show coming up on Thursday night, plus the Browns Blitz, I believe, with Jeff and with Rod and his brother Jeff coming up this week as well. Take care, everybody. And remember, too, that's right. Keep smiling. Go Browns. Go Cleveland. Shout out to Kaysen. All right. I got to find my music. Sayonara.